idea, but
Page in the CWSA page 350, we see that the absolute.
that's right. That's what my own note also says. So start reading that. Okay. So before we read that, I'll tell you what he is saying in the previous para, so that after 1 week we get the continuity also. So
15 days.
yeah. So saying here in the previous para, this conciliation is to be seen and applied at all levels. What is a conciliation? They are not opposites, but they are absolutely complementary aspects. The impersonal and the personal, okay? The quality and the qualityless, all these things are, we have to apply them at all levels. In other words, even in the physical world, when we see opposites, we must not see them as opposites, but different aspects of the same thing. That will actually enlarge our mind also. Suppose we see someone who is very cruel and someone who is very gentle, okay? Of course, your behavior must be appropriate, but you must not be very judgmental, okay? So that's what he's saying. So quality, feature, characteristics are powers of the consciousness. Courage, benevolence are powers, features of the consciousness. Similarly, the curative power of a herb, a drug, is a feature, a quality of the plant. And these features are implicit in the real idea that resides in the nirguna. In the less, all qualities are there hiding inside. All qualities are inherent in the absolute, but they do not define or determine the absolute, which is far greater than the quality or even a total sum of qualities. The absolute is not courage or curative power, nor are courage and cure the absolute. When finite mental logic fails us, we must go beyond to the logic of the infinite. The absolute is not courage or curative power, but it is much more than the sum of the two. Courage and curative power are features in the absolute, but they don't condition and they don't limit the absolute. That's what he's saying. Now we'll start reading the paragraph. Uh, one of you will read?
Shall I read?
Yes, do that. We see that the absolute.
We see that the absolute, the self, the divine, the spirit, the being is one. The transcendental is one, the cosmic is one. But we see also beings are many, and each has a self, a spirit, alike yet different nature. And since the spirit and essence of things is one, we are obliged to admit that all these many must be that one. And it follows that the one is or has become many. But how can the limited or relative be the absolute? And how can man or beast or bird be a divine being? But in erecting this apparent contradiction, the mind makes a double error. It is thinking in the terms of the mathematical finite unit, which is a soul in limitation, the one which is less than two and can become two only by division and fragmentation or by addition and multiplication. But this is an infinite oneness. It is the essential and infinite oneness which can contain the hundred and the thousand and the million and billion and trillion. Whatever astronomic or more than astronomic figures you heap and multiply, they cannot overpass or exceed that oneness. For in the language of the Upanishad, it moves not, yet is always far in front when you pursue and seize it. It can be said of it that it would not be the finite one, it would not be the infinite oneness if it were not capable of an infinite multiplicity. But that does not mean that the one is plural or can be limited or described as the sum of the many. On the contrary, it can be the infinite many because it exceeds all limitation or description by multiplicity and exceeds at the same time all limitation by finite conceptual oneness. Pluralism is an error because though there is the spiritual plurality, the many souls are dependent and interdependent existences. Their sum also is not the one, nor is it the cosmic totality. They depend on the one and exist by its oneness. Yet the plurality is not unreal. It is the one soul that dwells as the individual in these many souls, and they are eternal in the one, and by the one eternal. This is difficult for the mental reason, which makes an opposition between the infinite and the finite, and associates finiteness with plurality and infinity with oneness. But in the logic of the infinite, there is no such opposition, and the eternity of the many in the one is a thing that is perfectly natural and possible.
So one page para where he is explaining that in the mind, the ignorance of mind sees division. But when you go above the mind, division disappears. What is possible at logical level becomes logic of the infinite. It can be one and many at the same time. It can be qualityless and it can be qualitied also at the same time. It can be finite and infinite at the same time. So it can be in different places at the same time. Okay. So in fact, he has given one. It moves and moves now. Just 1 second. I'm getting a phone call. Just 1 second. Hello.
गुड मॉर्निंग
Good morning.
मैंने आपको भेज दिया था वो लिखिंग जो हो रहा था और उसके लाभे भेज दिया ठीक है
हाँ ठीक है. Okay. There is some
Thank you.
at a problem আছে.
थैंक यू
Okay. So there is that it moves not, yet is always far in front. Okay. So that is he is quoting from the Isha Upanishad. Tadejati tannaijati tadure tadantike. It is far and it is near. It moves and it moves not. This is not possible at the mental level, but is very, very possible at the spiritual level. Okay, that's what he's pointing out. It is also this essence of the story in which Sri Krishna is with Radha, but he is also with the other gopis. So someone who comes and sees Sri Krishna with Radha and he goes and sees that he is there elsewhere also. So how can he be there at the same time with everybody? That's exactly what Sripati is pointing out in this para here. What is not possible at the logical level is very, very possible. Not only possible, it is more than possible. It is the absolute law that you can have contradictory things at the spiritual level. Okay, so the divine can be one and the many. So we come back to that famous quotation from William Blake. Okay. You remember that the finite and the infinite are all one. Huh? So to see a world in a grain of sand, you can see the whole world. Huh? Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I have not quoted correctly, but this is the to see heaven in a wild flower and to see heaven in a wild flower and see the world in a grain of sand. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. This was written by William Blake 400, 500 years ago. So that is exactly what he's saying here. Basically, the idea is simple. We won't go into too many details because that's exactly what he's saying, the gist of it. So I'll read out the gist to you. Okay. Very simple. That which is not possible at the mental level, there are contradictions. There are no contradictions at the higher spiritual levels. Okay, and there's a gradation there also. So the summary of it goes like this: the absolute self, divine, spirit, being, transcendental, cosmic are all one. Okay? There's only oneness at the highest level. But there are also the many, similar to each other, yet different. Okay. This is the different souls that are being created. By the way, I have sent yesterday this Swabhava and Swadharma to everybody. Check your emails and you will find them. Okay. And
Yes, I read it.
yeah, so
Ah,
I think it should be clear, okay?
yes.
The idea of Swadharma and Swabhava, okay? Each soul is a quality, okay? And that quality is the Swabhava of it. That is what the divine gives each one. This will be your character. This will be your character. So each one, although it is one, they are all given qualities. And when you come down into the physical world, these qualities you have to use the qualities and do the particular work assigned to you in the physical world. Okay, so that's what it is. So we may conclude, now I'm reading the summary of this para. The absolute self, divine spirit, being, transcendental, cosmic are all one. But they are also the many, similar to each other, yet different. We may conclude that the many have all come from the one. But how can the one become the many, and how can the limited become the absolute? This mental logic errs on two counts, the mistakes of the logic. It takes the one to be the mathematical infinite one, which is less than two and can become two only by division, addition, and multiplication. But the absolute is an infinite oneness. It's not a finite oneness. As in the Isha Upanishad says, see note above, it moves not, yet is always far ahead and can never be caught. It is inside everything and outside everything as well. We have to go to the logic of the infinite. This is what he's saying. Idea is very clear. Okay, so don't be limited to your mental knowledge, which is limited. Okay, I think we can go to the next para. Nah? Again, we see that there is an infinite pure status. So,
Shall I read?
yes, do that.
Again, we see that there is an infinite pure status and immobile silence of the spirit. We see too that there is a boundless movement of the spirit, a power, a dynamic spiritual, all containing self-extension of the infinite. Our conception first upon this perception in itself, valid and accurate, an opposition between the silence and status and the dynamics and movement, but to the reason and the logic of the infinite, there can be no such opposition. A solely silent and static infinite and infinite without an infinite power and dynamism and energy is admissible except as the perception of an aspect, a powerless absolute. An important spirit is unthinkable, and infinite energy must be the dynamism of the infinite, and all power must be the potency of the absolute. An illimitable force must be the force of the spirit, but the silence, the status are the basis of the movement, and eternal immobility is the necessary condition, field, essence, even of the infinite mobility. A stable being is the condition and foundation of the vast action of the force of the being. It is when we arrive at something of this silence, stability, immobility, that we can see based on it a force and energy which in our superficial restless state would be unconceivable. The opposition we make is a mental and conceptual. In reality, the silence of the spirit and dynamics of the spirit are complementary truths and inseparable. The immutable silent spirit may hold its infinite energy silent and immobile within it, for it is not bound by its own forces, is not their subject or instrument, but it does possess them, does release them, is capable of an eternal and infinite action, does not weary or need to stop, and yet all the time it is silent immobility inherent in its action and movement. It is not for a moment shaken or disturbed or altered by its action and movement. The witness silence of the spirit is there in the very grain of all the voices and workings of nature. These things may be difficult for us to understand because our own surface finite capacity is either direction is limited and our perceptions are based on limitation. But it would be easy to see that these relative and finite conceptions do not apply to the absolute and infinite.
Yeah. Okay. So We'll do two things. We'll summarize the whole thing first and then we'll go into each one because some of the words were not read correctly. So, in fact, the opposite was read. So, I'll tell you first of all what he's saying in summary and then we'll go into each sentence quickly. Similarly, the absolute is a silence, an immutable, but the cosmos is an infinite movement. Okay, a mutable, constantly changing, eternal and infinite. Again, these two are not opposites, but only two poles of the same energy. It can be static and it can also be in movement. Okay? They are two aspects of the same thing. The sea can be absolutely calm and it can be full of violent waves and in fact, if you look at the deepest part of the ocean, on the surface there are waves, there's movement. But if you go deep inside, there may not be any movement at all. It's absolutely calm and stable. So this is what spiritual consciousness should be. Deep inside, absolute calmness and non-movement. It is only when there is no movement and no agitation that your judgment can be correct. So after that, on the top, you are acting, but the action is governed by the silence inside. That's how it should be. So, the absolute can hold its energy or can release it as it wishes. In fact, the movement would be impossible without the status from which it draws its sustenance, its existence and its power. Because there is silence, the movement is possible. That is the storehouse from which everything comes out. This is the second error of the human mind. The human mind, first of all, thinks of one as mathematical. Okay, it is limited one, but it is not limited one. There is a second error that you are thinking that opposites are there. So this is what it's saying, that they are not. That's the second error of the mind. Now, I quickly go through each sentence and the idea is clear, we should be able to understand it very easily. Again, we see that there is an infinite pure status and immobile silence of the spirit. Note the status means static, okay? And the word status can also mean a certain stage, okay? And a certain level. But here the implication is it is static, okay? And it is pure. The word pure immediately should suggest to you oneness. If there are two, it is not pure, it's a mixture. So the word infinite is descriptive. There is no limit. Pure is oneness and status. There is no movement at all. An immobile silence of the spirit. The word silence is constantly used, not for sound, but for the substance which does not move. Okay. There is no expression of it. It's completely dumb. That's the silence of the spirit. We see too that there is a boundless movement of the spirit, a power, a dynamic spiritual, all-containing self-extension of the infinite. Now note that word self-extension is very interesting. That which is static and condensed starts moving out and extending itself, and that becomes the universe. The universe is nothing but an extended oneness. Okay, so that is also what man is. Man is a condensed extension. Man is a condensed multiplicity, and the universe is the extended individual. You can think of it in that. Whatever is there in the individual is there in the cosmos. Whatever is there in the cosmos is also there in the individual. But one is compressed and condensed, the other is extended, okay? Widespread. Okay? Our conceptions foist upon this perception. The word foist means forcibly insist on and push it down your throat. Okay, so our conceptions, our mental conceptions are constantly imposing these wrong ideas upon oneself, that they are opposites. So foisting means putting a false charge on somebody. Okay, so our conceptions are putting false ideas into our head. Upon this perception, in itself valid and accurate, in opposition between the silence and status and the dynamics and movement. But to the reason and logic of the infinite, there can be no such opposition. So Sridhar is saying, when you are in the ignorance of the human mind, it is valid. You have to say them as opposites. But when you go up, they are not valid anymore. Okay? Depends at which level you are. Okay? A solely silent and static infinite, an infinite without an infinite power and dynamics and energy is inadmissible. Inadmissible, okay? You cannot admit it. It's not admissible, it is inadmissible. Cannot be admitted, except as the perception of an aspect. A powerless absolute and impotent, okay, not important. Important, the word will change completely. Impotent means without any power. Impotent spirit is unthinkable. The absolute must have power also. So it is static, but it must also have power. Otherwise, it's not the absolute. A powerless absolute, an impotent spirit is unthinkable. An infinite energy must be the dynamics of the infinite. And all power must be the potency of the absolute. An illimitable force must be the force of the spirit. God contains himself all the opposites which you think is not possible, but it is very, very possible. But the silence, the status are the basis of the movement. And eternal immobility is a necessary condition, field, essence even of the infinite mobility. A stable being is the condition and foundation of the vast action of the force of being. He is saying that if there is no storehouse of static condition, there can be no movement. This is something that you experience in the spiritual planes of existence. Okay, so you can challenge it mentally. Okay, you can say, why? I can think of constant movement only. But even in the mind, the moment you think of movement, the mind is thinking of the opposite also, na? The animal doesn't have this conception of opposites. But in human mind, as soon as you think of one quality, the opposite quality also flashes in your mind. And that becomes a reality in the spiritual world. If you think of death, you can think of immortality. That's why the idea of perfection comes into man. Okay? So this is what he's saying. The silence, the status is the basis of the movement, and eternal immobility is a necessary condition, field, essence even, of the infinite mobility. A stable being is the condition and foundation of the vast action of the force of being. It is when we arrive at something of this silence, stability, immobility, that we can base on it a force and energy which in our superficial restless state would be inconceivable. You can control yourself with power only when you have experienced the silence. That's what he's saying. If you are in the physical world, this is the thing that we feel, control your anger, okay, you say. To a certain extent, it is possible with the mind. The mind and the will can impose itself on the vital and say, okay, I am trying not to be angry, or I am trying not to be disturbed. But it is never 100%. It can't be. The 100% can come only when you experience the opposite. That's what Sir is saying. The opposition we make is mental and conceptual. In reality, the silence of the spirit and the dynamics of the spirit are complementary truths and inseparable. You can't even separate them. One implies the other. The immutable silent spirit may hold its infinite energy silent and immobile within it, for it is not bound by its own forces, is not their subject or instrument. But it does possess them, does release them, is capable of an capable of an eternal and infinite action. It does not weary or need to stop, and yet all the time its silent immobility, inherent in its action and movement, is not for a moment shaken or disturbed or altered by its action and movement. this is very interesting. At our level, we don't control the body-mind life. Body-mind life controls us. But the moment you go out of the body-mind life, now you can, from outside, you can control the body-mind life. And going outside means rising to the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. You can start to a certain extent controlling your lower nature. Not fully. The full control can come only at the supramental level. Okay? Yet all the time, and he's saying, I'm reading the last, the immutable silent spirit may hold its infinite energy silent and immobile within it. It can remain absolutely without movement, for it is not bound by its own forces. We are bound by our own forces. Our body, mind, life are the forces, and we are bound by it, but not the spirit, not the soul. Is not their subject or instrument, but it does possess them. Okay? We don't possess a body, mind, life, but the soul can possess the body, mind, life in the spiritual planes of consciousness when it goes up. But it does possess them, does release them, is capable of an eternal and infinite action, does not vary or need to stop, and yet all the time its silent immobility, inherent in its action and movement, is not for a moment shaken or disturbed or altered by its action and movement. Look at the words, does not vary or need to stop. Okay? When you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, there is no tiredness. Okay? Mother and Sri Aurobindo never slept. Their body was for 2 hours or so, they should just lie down. Mother even never use a bed even. She never used a bed. She was always on that inclined chair. In her room, you can see that. Okay, she never slept. Constantly working. Altered by action. The witness silence of the spirit is there in the very grain of all the voices and workings of nature. Nature is going on, acting. The wind is blowing, the sun is shining, the river is flowing, and yet at the back of the apparent workings, there is the silence of the nature. These things may be difficult for us to understand because our own surface finite capacity in either direction, either towards movement or non-movement, is limited, and our conceptions are based on our limitations. But it should be easy to see that these relative and finite conceptions do not apply to the absolute and infinite. In other words, spirit cannot be controlled. It is possible for it to do whatever it wants, totally free. It can be bound, it can be free. It can be finite, it can be infinite. Not us. We are at the lower level and we are governed by the contraries and the dualities. That's what it means. Okay, so we got 15 minutes more. We can read one more para. All these paras. Yeah, tell me.
Can I ask some questions about the write-up which you have given?
Yes, why not?
Or not now? One thing I wanted to know, that means to discover our Swadharma, we have to go inside.
Yes, that's right. We never.
It is only through
yoga.
It is only through the connection with the soul that we can discover our Swadharma. Nothing external can actually give us, or does the environment also point the Swadharma?
Absolutely, that's right. Not only that, you don't even know the Swabhava of your own soul. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay? And very often, that's why I give many examples. Okay, so for instance, that Nagmasha thought he wanted to become a monk, but that was not his Swadharma. Okay. Then also I have given the example of Modi also. 3 times he wanted to become a monk, but he was refused. Okay. So we can make a mistake in the physical world and not understand our Swadharma and the Swabhava. But Sri Aurobindo says, I give that last quotation from Essays, if you can actually use your Swabhava in the physical world, your action will be absolutely, you'll be fulfilling this Swadharma of your, you have to contact your soul. Without the contact of the soul, you will never be able to be fully in control of your Swadharma. It's not very easy to understand what the Swadharma is.
That was my next question, actually, Rangada. That's exactly what I was going to ask. So, to understand us Swadharma, first we have to discover our Swabhava.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And different people may have the same Swabhava. Swabhava means same qualities, you can say, but Swadharma can be entirely different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at mother and son, those very, very clear. Na? Both have the divine qualities in them. Okay. But one is going into something else and one is going into something else.
And people can have different Swabhava and maybe the same Swadharma? Similar Swadharma, not the same.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that's right. Because the work in the physical world need not be done only in one way. It can be done in so many ways, from different approaches. Yeah, that's right. So
these were some questions which were going on in my mind, so I thought I could ask you.
Yeah, they're very, very valid. Huh? The more we ask questions, sometimes we may get puzzled, but sometimes there's clarity also comes. So,
may I say something?
Go ahead.
You know, the whole essence of the ashram school is that you don't have to be a 90 or 100% student. I mean, what mother has said, that if you want success, money and career, do not fill up this form.
Yes, yes.
And each individual has to bring out the best qualities in him and act accordingly. So, in a way, it is that each individual, like someone may be an artist or someone may be a scientist. So, is the ashram school helping to bring that swabhava of the child out?
Yes, I think so. Because mother says very clearly that the purpose of education is not to make you into a scientist or a software programmer or a doctor. It is to help you to understand what your soul is. So the psychic has to be brought out. And the psychic has to be brought out, but the best way is freedom. Let the child himself discover his truth. Okay, that's the thing. So that is why there is so much of freedom. Without freedom, you can't understand and develop yourself. So the whole purpose of education in the ashram is that, not to make you into a painter or an artist or a doctor or a scientist. It is to make you understand your real nature and the soul. And once the psychic comes forward, then you yourself will determine your own swadharma. But without understanding what the soul is, it's not possible to know. Okay, and note also that swadharma has nothing to do with the profession that you are in. Okay, it is nothing to do with the profession or even the caste. That idea is completely false. And I told you, who is a Brahmin? A Brahmin who is one who has got these qualities of calmness, of knowledge, of patience, of forbearance, of gentleness. He may be a Shudra, he may be a Kshatriya also, but that is nothing to do with the caste system. It's completely misunderstood. The caste. Yeah, tell me.
Sorry. One more question. Has this swabhava anything to do with the gunas, or gunas belong to the Prakriti completely?
That is something which I did not specify, but the gunas have absolutely nothing to do with the swabhava. The swabhava, when it comes down into the physical world, the swabhava is the gunas are the sattva, rajas, tamas, and they belong to the lower hemisphere.
Okay.
Okay, there is no sattva, rajas, tamas in the
Supermind.
Not only supermind, even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, there is no sattva, rajas, tamas. That belongs only to the body-mind life. Okay, so you must be very, very careful. In fact, when you go to the spiritual levels of consciousness, you have become gunatita. You have gone beyond the gunas. Okay, you have gone.
That is That is what I thought. That's why, but the qualities of Brahma and Kshatriya are so similar. That's why I thought I should ask you this to make it clear for once
Yeah.
and
Now it's
for
clear.
all. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
Rangaja,
yes, yes.
Yes.
Rangaja,
Yes, tell me.
I have learned from this Jainism, this book I have given, Krupadudev Srimad Rajchandra, that the
Yes.
very swabhava of the soul is only to see and observe neutrally. That's all. If you do that, thinking that you are a soul, and your swabhava should be see and observe. That's all, without involving anything. That is the basic swabhava of the soul. If we move from it, then only all the problem creates.
Okay, Shilpa, that is true for the going up to liberation. Okay.
Ah,
When you are a witness and only you are looking, you are only observing, you are not acting in the physical world. So it is valid for Jainism. But is Srimdo satisfied only with Swabhava as a witness soul? No. He says that you must also act in the physical world. So what you are saying is absolutely valid for Jainism, okay, and the spiritual experience of liberation. But Srimda wants to go one step beyond liberation. He wants action also at the same time. So,
ah. So they say no, even in your day-to-day life also, you just see and observe. That's all, and do your duty without any attachment. Finally, so you are following your soul in
yeah,
that.
you are following your soul at the level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. Okay?
Ah.
You are only observing your body, mind, life, which is imperfect. Okay? You are not disturbed. You are just watching your mind, okay? That is absolutely. You go to the self. That's what happens. You become a witness, but you are powerless. Are you satisfied with that? The most of the Jains will be very satisfied with that because it is liberation. You are free from the prison house of body, mind, life. But Srimdra is not satisfied with that. He
Okay.
wants to go one step more. He wants you to act also in the physical world with perfect. That is where the Swadharma comes in.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to go one step beyond. The what you are saying is a stage, is a middle stage. For
Okay.
most of them, it is the final stage. Okay. They say we are very satisfied with the soul becoming free. No problem. Okay. I don't care for the body, mind, life. They will tell you. Okay. All religions will tell you that. And Jainism also is stopping at that level. Okay. There is nothing wrong with that. By the way, I should also tell you that Srimla is not finding fault with the middle stage. He is not finding fault. He's saying that's fine. And if you are satisfied with that, I have nothing to say. But so far as I am concerned, I would like even to the action in the physical world to become perfect. Follow? So
Yes.
he is going beyond the religions. Okay? He is going even beyond the Gita. He is going even beyond the Gita. So what Shilpa said is absolutely correct at the level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. But there is something even higher than the spiritual planes of consciousness. Okay? And this discussion that we are having now, silence and action, okay, does not apply to the religions. The religions are only wanting silence, not the action. But Sridhar is saying we want both. We want perfect action and perfect silence. We have to combine the two. You should be like the ocean, deep inside, absolutely calm and quiet. And on the surface, you are acting, but the silence of the depths should control the action of the surface. That's what he's saying. Okay.
But in essence, what
Yes,
Mother and Sri Aurobindo have said for all action is remember and offer.
that is the process of.
So, yeah, so everything becomes one only. Whether you sweep the floor or kill a cockroach or sit and do mathematics or physics. But if you remember an offer, then everything becomes one.
No, how it becomes one? How can it become one? The remembering and offering is a process when you are in ignorance.
Yeah.
But when you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, there is no ignorance and there is no remembering and offering. It ceases. You have forgotten that in the synthesis he says that there are 3 stages. Okay. The first stage is you are making an effort, remembering and offering, and you don't even see the help coming in. Second level, the help you start seeing it coming, and yet your effort has to be there. At the third level, there is no effort at all. There is no wanting. There is no praying. There is nothing. You have achieved what you want. Okay. At that time, oneness comes in. Not earlier. Not earlier.
No. What I meant is, irrespective of what action you do, like you may sweep a floor or I may do surgery.
Okay.
But everything has to be remembered and offered to the divine.
That's right. That's a process.
That is what I'm meaning. That whether I kill a cockroach for a specific reason. That cleanliness is next to godliness, and I don't want that little vital force in my house.
Okay.
Otherwise, all giants will have to pamper the spiders, mosquitoes, cockroaches, ants, whatever. But you see, the house is very clean.
Okay.
So, like you will not allow a cockroach to roam in Sri Aurobindo's room. You don't kill it, no?
Okay.
But you kill it for a purpose. So, but if you remember and kill, then maybe, although you are in that lower mortal state, like of physical mind, which I live in, but at least in that physical mind also, there is a little remember and offer, which maybe takes you a micron up.
When you are killing a cockroach, is it necessary to remember the mother?
I don't know.
Okay, it's interesting, but it depends at which level you are again. The action itself does not matter much, as I told you. No? You can, no, okay, but let's take another case, okay? Not Surendra's room, but that's too much. But in my own room, if I see a cockroach going about, and I am absolutely not affected at all by it, okay? I see a cockroach in my room, but I am not absolutely affected at all. Is my attitude correct or not correct?
No, it is a correct attitude in the sense that you are not scared by the cockroach.
That's right. So that's why
there is no fear of the cockroach.
Yeah, fear should not be there. If fear is there, then what I'm saying doesn't apply. Okay, you're not affected at all. So killing a cockroach or not killing a cockroach is an incidental matter. It is not that which matters much. There's killing a cockroach is wrong, not killing a cockroach is right, and the opposite. These are not, these are irrelevant things. Okay. But the process that you are saying of remembering and offering, remembering is a process by which you go to the silence. You can't get the silence and the realization of your soul without this process of remembering and offering. It's a process at the lower levels. But once you have reached a higher level, there is no more effort. There is no remembering and offering. Remembrance is constant. It's constant.
Rangada,
Yeah.
can I say something here?
Yes.
Just what I have understood, like whatever I have understood a little. See, like when we are in our ordinary life, we can start off with remembering, offering, whatever we are doing.
Yes.
And maybe when we are connected with our soul or we get some light from our soul, the outside work, the dharma, whatever we were doing can completely change.
Oh, yes, it can.
It can. And then probably that is when I have discovered got something understanding of my Swadharma. So maybe the work which I started off with was not actually my Swadharma. That was my way to become one with my soul, to realize my soul or to experience, or whatever you can say. I mean, I'm not. And then after realizing or coming in close contact with my soul or understanding my soul, maybe I understand that the work which I have to do is completely different, or I realize that there is something else, or I may even come by chance to a work which is completely different from what I have been trained to do.
Of course, it can happen. Yes, what you're saying is
So-
absolutely right. The best example I can give you for this is Sri Aurobindo himself. Okay,
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo thought that his work is liberation of India. Okay, that's a Kshatriya work. Okay, and he was, although he himself was a Vaishya, okay, he was a Ghosh. He was not even a Brahmin or anything, but he thought that his work was to liberate the country. But the divine says, wait, that work can be done by somebody else, but I want you to do something else. When he came to Pondicherry, then he understood his real Swadharma. Okay, it is the establishment of this, the supramental world. That is your Swadharma. Okay, so that's
So
precisely.
in a way, remembering and offering makes us closer to our soul, helps us to discover our soul. And our Swabhava and Swadharma can only be discovered when we do become one with the soul, right?
Absolutely. That's what I think. You can't know your Swabhava and Swadharma unless you realize your soul. Because each soul, essentially divine, yet has different characteristics. As I told you again, very easy example, mother is divine, essentially Sri Aurobindo is divine, but their souls have different swabhavas. Mother is more into beauty and painting and all that, and Sri Aurobindo is more into literature. So they are different aspects. All divinity is not of one uniform nature. There can be 100 types of natures. Each soul is divine in essence, but it expresses itself in different natures. One can be of power, one can be of beauty, one can be of action, one can be of determination. There's so many things. Exactly. So I think what Archana ji said is absolutely right. And the best example of that is exactly this, na? So those how he came here and then he was made to do another work which was his real Swadharma.
What is the protocol to reach the soul or the Swadharma?
The protocol. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Long,
It
do
is
yoga.
very difficult.
It depends upon person to person.
By the way, we have crossed by 3 minutes.
Yes, Rangada. Okay, you must be having a class.
Let's stop here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Merci
yes.
beaucoup.
Thank you, Ranga. Thank you, Ranga.
Yeah, I can see clearly that the article has helped Swabhava and Swadharma. Okay, what Archana they
Yes,
told.
Rangada.
Yeah, it was your question. That's why we went into details. Okay.
Thank you, Rangada.
Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice
Thanks,
day.
Dr. Kamal.